Welcome to Meet the Candidates. My name's Eric Crump. I'm with the Homewood Flossmoor Chronicle. We're talking with Donna Miller, who currently represents the 6th District in Cook County. She's running for the 2nd District Congressional seat. And we talked about some of her accomplishments in Cook County and her focus on women's reproductive rights and health care, as well as economic development in the Southland, and issues that she'll face if she's elected to Congress with trying to get things done and meet policy goals in a very fraught environment.
And I know we've had a long-standing relationship, so during the time I've been on the county board, so I'm a Cook County Commissioner, as you mentioned. I've been on the county board for the last 8 years. But prior to that, I come from a family of service and honor and giving back to the community. I'm proud to say that my family is from Chicagoland area, both sides of my family. So over 120 years, my family's lived in Cook County, and that made me really proud as a county board member. So I have a family who, my father was in the military, my grandfather, so service and honor to our country has been something that's been woven into me from childhood. Every generation of teachers in my family, great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, sister, all CPS teachers, Chicago Public School teachers. And so, I feel like, when you look at how you build communities, it's families that build communities. And that's what I've taken into my role as commissioner. And my professional background was in the biotech industry, where I focused on healthcare initiatives, eliminating healthcare disparities. And that's the work that I've done mostly on the county board. And I'm proud of that work as a Cook County Commissioner. As a county, we are the 2nd largest county in the country, and we have the largest public health hospital. And now we see that healthcare is really at the forefront of everything that's happening in our country now, with the dismantling of Medicaid, taking away Medicare, eliminating research for women. I've been a proponent of women's health throughout my entire career. Prior to being on the board, I served as the board chair of Planned Parenthood and was a staunch advocate for women's reproductive rights. And we see those eroding right now. And I see the work that I've done as a commissioner and my professional life coming together as I run for Congress.
Thank you. You've already touched on some of the things that are probably going to be your policy priorities if you're elected, but I wondered if you wanted to clarify specific issues that you hope to tackle right away.
Right. So right away, I've been working on many things on the national level for years now, and mostly focused around healthcare. NACO, which is National Association of Counties, NACO has legislative policies that we are focused on urging the federal government to do something about. So 3 big policies that I've been working on with NACO over the last several years. 3 policy initiatives last year in 2025 were focused on healthcare initiatives, cardiovascular health, which I've been focused on for decades, maternal health, which we're in a maternal health crisis in this country. Illinois is also one of the states that has work to do, especially for the mortality rates for Black women and women of color. And I've been working on that as well as a commissioner. I got the first ever doula program at Cook County Hospital, where we are going to be able to provide doula services as mid-level providers to help improve the outcomes for women at any stage of their pregnancy. And then other research related to research for uterine fibroids. And so those are 3 big policy initiatives that I'd be focused on. And then the other one that faces the Southland and the connectivity from the south suburbs to the city of Chicago and the rest of the district, which includes Kankakee and Danville, is focused on the South Suburban Airport. We have a logistics hub here in the 2nd Congressional District. I don't think most people realize that this is where 5 interstates meet. So we have to connect the south suburbs to the city of Chicago, but it's also the connection throughout the entire Midwest. We, in the south suburbs, where those 5 interstates meet, have transportation that we can focus on rail, which we already have, trucks, and now the airport. The airport will provide 15,000 new jobs. I know you've been on the forefront of this for all the years we've been talking about the airport, but it needs to come to fruition. It needs to come, and that would be one of my priorities from a logistics, transportation, and economic development standpoint. And then the other thing that I think is important that we need to focus on in this area is there's a lot of farms down past our area here, but farming is going to be the agricultural initiatives that have also been cut by this administration would be another priority of mine.
Okay, thanks. And I'm glad you mentioned the airport and the job situation. That was reminds me of another thing I wanted to talk to you about that I think is going to influence how those jobs play out, or how they come to fruition, and that is artificial intelligence and robotics, which Amazon, for instance, we have a number of Amazon warehouses here. They already use a lot of robotics. They just announced the other day they're laying off 16,000 people. It's kind of a drop in the bucket compared to their whole workforce, but it's also suggests the beginnings of a possible trend. And I wanted to read a couple quotes to you that suggest the kind of the momentous impact that AI could play in our area, and see how it might apply to the projects that you want to promote. One is from the founders of a company called Mechanize, and it's an AI company, and their mission is summed up here basically. It says, there are many who believe, or at least hope, that we can seize the benefits of AI without making human labor obsolete. These hopes are unfortunately mistaken. In the long run, AI that fully substitutes for human labor will likely be far more competitive, making their creation inevitable. And then on the Hard Fork podcast, which covers tech and focuses on AI quite often, they discussed last September the scope of investment in AI. They said that the interstate road system, which was built over 36 years, cost $300 billion in today's dollars. And they said the CEO of chipmaker NVIDIA said US companies would spend $600 billion in 1 year. So that's like a massive and unprecedented amount of wealth being invested in developing AI, which sort of makes that inevitability predictions sound true. So I wondered if human labor is really their goal to eliminate, then how can Congress be part of the process of transforming our economy and protecting workers?
Well, I do know in Congress they're looking at how AI will play a role, and not just in that industry, across the board, in industries in general. I think we have to get a handle on what AI can provide from the other side too. Someone has to be able to implement the AI. Somebody has to be able to, it's not going to be robots developing the technology themselves. So there is human input. That's why we have to have better training for the next generation to come up and know how they can fit themselves into what the jobs of the future look like. Whether they're AI focused or managing a fleet of cars or logistical hubs. I think that Congress has a role in setting the standards of what that looks like and what it can look like based off of different areas too. I wouldn't like to see certain areas be disadvantaged for AI opportunities and other areas be advantaged. That's where Congress can set a standard across the board, so we don't see, hubs in areas where they already have infrastructure for things that they might not need more AI for. So I think the Midwest does provide a big opportunity for that. We see that with the quantum PSI facility that's coming into the south side of Chicago, and what that's going to look like from a data input standpoint. But those are jobs that we have to build the infrastructure to train our young people for. As you know, I have 2 children and they're grown now. But I look at how we're going to make sure that they do have skill sets. I have one who's a civil engineer. Building roads is what he does. But building roads has many different layers to it, bridges. And we are, unfortunately, this administration cut some of the infrastructure, most all of the infrastructure projects that the Biden administration had put in place to build back up our infrastructure. So how are we going to build back up our infrastructure, cut out labor, and have AI? We have to entwine them. We have to make sure they're entwined together.
Okay. So that'll be kind of an oversight role in terms of seeing that it's done equitably, right?
Equitably, and with a plan for the future. It can't just be we're going to stop and start and stop and start. We have to make sure that it's planned out, and it rises with technology. As we know, technology changes literally probably every second, every minute, and what that looks like too. And so who's going to understand that? I mean, we have to put people in those jobs in place to make sure that they know what that looks like.
Okay. We also wanted to talk a little bit about how you've prepared for being a congresswoman. The situation in Congress right now is fraught. I mean, it's been contentious for a long time. That's a normal part of our politics. But there have been periods, and we're in one right now, where Congress is virtually stuck. Basically can't function properly. And we have an executive branch that's taken generations of increasing executive power to a whole new level. I even jotted down just a few examples of how Congress has been disrespected, I guess you could say. I mean, the administration has openly suggested that they don't have to comply with House subpoenas. The DOGE program, which was in the news in the early months of Trump's administration, never really officially went away, but it did a lot to erode and hobble and even eliminate programs and departments that Congress created. So there's been military action without consultation with Congress. There was even a bipartisan immigration reform effort that Donald Trump is credited or accused of thwarting before he was even elected. And there's been grants that were appropriated by Congress that were supposed to help our area that were just frozen or delayed and so on. So, I mean, that makes a very difficult terrain to go into if you want to accomplish your policy goals. How are you thinking that, or are you thinking there are new approaches or strategies that a fresh woman can do in Congress? How can you be effective, basically?
Well, I think the first thing is you can't give up.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Yeah.
We know that this president and this administration is doing things that are unprecedented. So everybody's head is spinning, but people are still behind the scenes making things happen. Subpoenas, lawsuits, making sure that appropriating funds is still happening where it can happen, and not forgetting that it was appropriated. So I think that's some of the things that they want us to be brainwashed, like, oh, that didn't happen, or we didn't do that. Yes, we did, and we can show, and we need to get it back. Even when we look at the funding for Medicaid that's been cut, and people are feeling that on the ground right every single day. Every time I talk to people, people are afraid of what their health care is going to do to them or not do for them. And cutting $880 billion just with the swipe of a pen and not having a plan to replace it, we can't let this administration, we can't let constituents feel that there's no recourse. The recourse can't just be, we're just going to pay more money. So as a fresh woman, congresswoman, I think the best thing to do, the House is going to change, I mean, in 26. I'm convinced of that, okay? So I think that we'll at least have some consensus amongst the House as how we want things to go. And
meaning it'll be in Democratic control?
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes,
Just to clarify, yeah.
Yes, but I also think that once we get those legislators together, once we define the priorities and work together as the House, as a freshman, changing and change over, and get back out into our communities and talk to our communities. That's what they're also doing, not talking to their communities. They don't want them to know what's actually happening. And I think that's one of the priorities that I would make sure I'm out on the ground, having those conversations, enlightening people, making people feel like they can still be part of the process, because I do believe that. I do believe you can't give up and you can't just be silent. And advocacy still works. That's how we got some of the changes that we've already gotten and had and happen. But we have to be vocal advocates, and we have to do it all the time. And also building consistency amongst every level of government. Having my experience being a county commissioner, I know what counties can do. I've seen the state help counties. I've seen the federal government help the state, help the counties. So working with all levels of government on all of these initiatives is something that I'd be able to build those bridges very effectively and easily as a congresswoman. but also show how it makes a difference when we're talking about making sure we're putting back, but not just putting back, we have to enhance. So there's not enough just to say we're going to put back $880 billion. We're going to have to put it back and build upon it. The infrastructure, we have to build upon it. We can't just say we're going to let things take over and then do nothing else about it. We have to build on it. We are with an administration that is, like I said, doing things that are unprecedented, but we can't let us forget that we do have a constitution, we do have checks and balances that are supposed to be put in place, and we will follow the rule of law.
That's actually it reminds me of another thing that I think about is if the executive isn't going to respect the Constitution or is going to interpret it its own way, how can Congress be an effective counterbalance? I mean, that's the way the system was set up, was co-equal branches of the government to balance each other out. But if, as people have observed, Congress doesn't have its own army, neither does the Supreme Court. The executive has to be checked by what? How can you do that?
Well, the president doesn't have his own army either. I mean, so how can he be? So I just feel like where we are right now, no one's ever been.
Yeah.
And even just making it so we can dispatch the army, the military, without checking with Congress, it makes no sense to anyone. So how can we do that? We all have to be unified. We all have to follow the rules. I mean, but that's not happening. But there has to be, I think also we have to have more public outcry as to what that looks like. And we do see that working. It's hard. It's hard work. And but people are engaged, people are paying attention, and people aren't going to stand for it. And we don't want our country to lose its democracy.
Yeah, that's the other concern, is whether democracy is going to survive this. It's been eroded in numerous ways, and not just from Donald Trump, but that's another thing that's kind of a difficult, very big problem, is how do you rebuild trust in the process when we're going through times like we are. So,
change the players.
Yeah, there's part of it.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah. I was wondering too, your experience in county government obviously has some transfer. You know how to work with people, how to work with other legislators, but Congress is also a different playing field than what you've got direct experience with so far. I was wondering how you have prepared for stepping into that role and hitting the ground running, and in terms of understanding how everything works in Washington.
Well, I don't think you have to be in Washington to understand what's going on in Washington. I think you can learn from experts. I have policy experts, I have communication experts, I have Congress people and senators who I already have relationships with and have had relationships with, just on issue-based things that I've worked on in the past, whether it's healthcare, transportation. I've lobbied Congress myself as just a person, going there to lobby for issues that I've cared about. I've been to White House briefings just myself as a person caring about issues. So I understand how all those pieces fit in. I've met with budget administrators from the White House as well, talking about different things specifically related to healthcare. That's mainly the things that I've been focused on. But I think that knowing how those should work, they're not working like that right now for anybody. So I wouldn't say that I would be the person to come in there and make sure I change all that, but I would be the person to come in and make sure I'm having at least all those different conversations with every single different moving piece that has something to do with it, and coming up with a plan to get that change to happen. So I look at negotiations and having conversations as one of my expertise. I've done that across the board in corporate America. I've done that here as a government official. And I see that as something that would be needed to have in Congress. It wouldn't be something foreign to me at all. I understand that being on a different level, like a congressional level for our whole country, makes a difference. But I do think that using those skills is also important.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Another issue I wanted to bring up that's, I think, on the minds of a lot of voters these days is affordability. prices have gone up. We've had inflation for several years. It has cooled some, but has not gone down to a level people hoped for. And so all the basics are really difficult for people to reach: housing, food, energy. Congress has a role, doesn't control the economy, but are there things that you think Congress can do that would help address those problems?
Well, yeah, especially when I look at the 2nd Congressional District, where we are. You know, the district is urban, suburban, rural, but the thing that's the same across all of them is they want affordability.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter. We were in Kankakee. Doesn't matter if we're in Kankakee or Bronzeville. The same people want the same thing. I look at all of those areas too, though. Along the whole district, we have a healthcare desert, we have food deserts, we have economic development deserts. We border a state, Indiana. We have violence prevention issues that make it hard for us to make our laws enacted when we border a state that doesn't have the same laws. So I look at bringing all of those together as a way that we can make not only the 2nd Congressional District, but that's what's important to constituents here, is the making sure that we're uplifting and having those type of forums, making the policies, initiatives that impact the 2nd Congressional District very directly. We have to talk about each one separately because each one kind of overlaps. If you go to certain areas, they have all of those at the same time. You know, if we talked about the farmers that are in the other part of the district, they might not have the same issues as an urban area, but they do have affordability issues, and they experience in that too. So coming into Congress, we have to address those issues. We have to talk about how to make laws and policies to change those, and bring back some of the things that we let go to the wayside. Yeah, like you said, there's some things that are sitting there, right there. They're sitting in Congress right now because we're not moving anything forward. And that's an area to improve upon when we change the House.
Okay. All right. In campaigning in such a big district, you mentioned the needs of rural people and urban and suburban people quite often are similar. But have you learned things from talking with people in the rural areas, that big swath south of the south suburbs? Are there things you've learned from them that are different?
That are different?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the biggest difference is, you know, this district has 4,200 farms in it. So we're not thinking about farms when we're in downtown Chicago. We're not thinking about farms necessarily in the south suburbs, although I live right next door to a working farm. So I don't think about it as a farming issue, but I do think about it as an economic issue. So I do think the economics that come into play for in rural part of the district affects farming different than it would affect a suburban municipality. But the other thing is, when we have to have money coming in from the federal government, we have to look at all the municipalities as a whole. I think that's one thing that happened, we saw during COVID, that money came from the federal government to counties or to states, but it didn't come directly to small municipalities. Most municipalities are 20,000 people or less, and that makes, or even less, 10,000 or less. And how can small municipalities compete when they don't have a budget for their police force, when they don't have a fire department, when they can't do infrastructure projects because there's no funding for it? Federal government does have to help smaller municipalities, and I've seen that across the board from how all the different areas are connected. So that issue is the same. They don't have access to enough money to make things like that happen.
Okay, yeah, and that is a problem we're all facing, especially we're in a blue state that the Trump administration wants to defund, basically. So, I mean, that's a difficult thing to address when the executive sort of is taking over Congress's role in managing the purse strings.
Right.
One other thing that's a really hot topic nationally right now is the immigration enforcement project that has hit Chicago. It's currently in Minneapolis and Minnesota, the Twin Cities area mainly. That's been, very disruptive and is another challenge to the balance of power because it's demonstrably violating constitutional rights of people.
Right.
I don't think I'm out of line to say that. I think that's observable. So the Robin Kelly, our current representative, has led the way on trying to impeach the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, and that's where immigration is under. Is that the kind of pushback that you support too, or are there other things you think we should be doing in Congress to, to I guess, recalibrate immigration enforcement?
Well, I definitely would support
Yeah.
Congresswoman Kelly's impeachment of Kristi Noem, specifically just for the unhanded way that they're doing things. I mean, and treating our own American citizens, using police or would-be militia against us, and without any checks and balances, no authority to police the way they are doing it right now, and to really. The loss of life is just unimaginable when you think that someone lost their life from a protest, and so we do need to get that in, back on where it should be. So ICE was established to make sure that we're protecting our borders. That makes sense. And protecting our borders, not assaulting our own citizens. ICE was also established to make sure that, if there are illegal immigrants who come in, that they have a process that they are fairly dealt with, because they shouldn't be rounded up and, if they came here legally. And that's what we're hearing from so many of those situations that we've heard about. That these are not the criminals. These are not people. These are people who were looking for asylum, and they came to our country for help. So we need to develop a process that deals with the immigration in a fair and equitable way, which is not going to happen under this administration and under this Homeland Security advisor. So I think it's really shaking us all up to our core to see that, you could just be stopped on the street and ask for paperwork, and if it's not provided, then you're arrested. So we can't stand for that in our communities. Second District is no stranger to that. The first ICE raid was in the South Shore area. Black Hawk helicopters coming. I mean, militaristic, operatives coming and on assaulting our citizens, and they haven't been given any restitution from that situation. So I think that we need to completely reform ICE. I would say that the defund of ICE idea is a worthwhile one, but there has to be parameters and levels to that, even still, that we have to put in place, and they're not going to be put in place with this administration with their unfair way that they just dole out their power.
Well, thank you for sparing some time to help us inform the voters, especially in Homewood and Flossmoor. I wonder if there are other issues or other things about your plans that you want to make sure people know about that we haven't talked about so far.
Well, there's two other things that I think are important that I actually have on the national scale right now. So these are things that I've instituted at NACO. And in this environment that we're in right now, I mean, we're talking about really trying to fight for survival. So they might seem like they're down on the list, but environmental justice and climate control is still an issue that also this administration wants to act like doesn't mean anything. I put forth a resolution to examine that as well and look to put money back in that. This administration cut out the whole Justice 40 initiative that was put forth by the Biden administration. And we still need to have, we do have a climate control issue. I went and presented this at NACO, and the first thing someone yelled out, this is a bipartisan group, right? And someone yelled out, climate control is a hoax. So I believe in evidence and science to back up everything, whether it's healthcare, whether it's climate control. And we've gone away from that. We need to continue to have those conversations, but it's hard to have those right now when we're, like I said, literally fighting for our groceries and making sure we can put heat our homes in this cold weather. So that's one of the other initiatives. And then this also seems further down, but you mentioned AI. We have to get control over social media. I did start the first ever social media safety day here in Cook County because children are growing up listening and reading and learning things on social media that may not be true. And this administration has also helped fuel the flames of what fake news looks like, because they coined that phrase, but then they have also given it all the energy that it has. So I think that that's also something that our Congress and our federal government should put initiatives around, and how do we make sure the next generation, our children, are not growing up with misinformation, disinformation. We had a whole conversation at NACO about the difference between that. So we can't even agree on words right now. But the problem is the information is not right, it's fake, it's not true. So those are two other initiatives I would like to see, and that goes to whether it starts from educating at the school level. We can put those type of improvements in our school systems, in our colleges, in our secondary education, as well as in our government. So those are things that we have to make sure that Congress has a role in.
Okay. Oh, and I just remembered one that I wanted to ask you about. You have another new initiative at the county level, the Violence Against Women program. Did you want to describe a little bit about what you've got started there?
Yeah, so this has been also another thing in the works for the last several years. So we started the first ever Chicago Cook County Domestic Violence Task Force. And the reason for that is we've seen an unprecedented increase in domestic violence in Cook County. So what does that let us know? Cook County includes Chicago. So Chicago and Cook County got together to say we need to examine what that problem looks like. We have issues in the court system where orders of protection are not filed properly or not filed at all. We have issues with court dates being delayed, and that's cost several women their lives. We have issues where people have been let out of jail or just put on electronic monitoring. And when they're on electronic monitoring, that's when they commit a crime. And some of those crimes led to loss of life. So we want to get a handle on all three of those very quickly, and how we can stop and intervene and make sure that someone's not going to lose their life because they're in court from a domestic violence abuser.
Okay. Sounds like an important project. Is that another issue you want to expand on and take national if you're
Absolutely,
elected?
yes. And actually, we're going to, we'll talk to you about that. We're going to have a press conference next week on the task force.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you again for joining us.
Well, thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. All right.